Hello and welcome to Ballam Farm. This is episode 4 part 2 and we're on our way to sort out the beef cattle. So the first priority is to sell the surplus cattle. By surplus cattle I mean the difference between the amount we can we can house during winter and the amount that we have in the field. So we have 100 in the field, we can store 80, so we can store 50 in the big shed and 30 in the smaller shed. So that means we have to sell at least 20. So I think what I'm going to do to make it a nice round transportable number is I'm going to sell 24 and we'll be left with 76 beef cattle, which we will then transfer into the sheds. Right, so let's get started. And I've decided that we're going to specialize in Angus cattle, so all 24 cows that will be sold, or cattle that will be sold, will be limousines or limousines. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce them, to pronounce it, should I say. And we'll sell those to the animal dealer. So that'll be a few trips down to the animal dealer to sell these cows. They should get a 2,000, just under 2,800 per head. So that's a nice little source of income in this month of December. Right. The first 6 loaded up. We'll do the first. We'll head off down the back road to the town area, and then we will just pop into the animal dealer and drop these off. Bit of a tight turn here. Should be okay. No traffic around at this point in time, so we're a bit lucky there. I think the traffic does come streaming down this road. So we will do this trip 4 times. I'll just show it to you the one time. Right, so we're sitting on just over 50,000 at the moment. Just reverse in there. It's pretty tight. Right, so that's it. Those 6, we'll get those sold. Good, that's it sold. So that's just about 16,000, just under 16,700. Nice little bit of income. We'll do that 4 times. Be roughly the same amount. The price doesn't fluctuate that much. Right, so as you can see there, we're up to 116,000 and we've got 76 cattle left in the field. So we'll move all the limousines to the small, 26 of them, to the small barn. Off we go. Fairly short trip, basically just around the barn that we need to do to move them in. Unfortunately we don't have, as I've mentioned before, a herding mod where we can just herd them all into the shed without having to transport them individually. It's just a fact of life. but it's not a major problem. Right. Just putting on the interactive markers because the trigger is fairly tight, so we just need to know exactly where it is. There we go. Yeah, so this one takes 30, and that's the there we go. That's the first 6 going in. So there'll be 26 going into this barn. There'll be a little bit of leeway, should I say. Should we find another 4 cattle somewhere around, or we need another 4 cattle in there, but I don't think it'll be necessary. Right, this should be the last of the limousines. Yep, it's the last 2 in there. That's that done, so 26 in there, and we can get started on the Angus now. So there should be 50 left in the field, and those 50 will go into the big cow barn. There we go, 50, and it's the first 6 loaded. Yes, it's a laborious task, it's a repetitive task, but a lot of things on farms are repetitive. Alright, so let's have a look and see where we are now. It's the first lot going in, I think. Oops. Another little ding on the trailer. Not too bad. So I think, yeah, this is the trigger right at the top here. And that's the first 6 going into the top shed, or to the big cow barn. Just reverse out, and we're going to fetch the rest. Just drive through the feeding area, just makes it a little bit easier. First task after doing our milk in January to get some bedding into some fresh bedding into the beef cattle barns. And then when we move the cattle out, we'll move the beef cattle out first. It's probably in March, so that they can get out into the grass. We'll see what the weather's like in March first of all though. If it's snowing and that type of stuff, we won't move them out, we'll just have to delay. Right, so that's the last lot, save 1. Don't know how come I left 1 cow there. There should have been 2. I must have, well, basically I made a little mistake while I was transporting the one instead of instead of offloading the full amount of cows, I only loaded off one instead of 6. So it carried 5 back and then had to just load 1 cow on the way out. Yeah, it was eventful. Well, that's that done. So now we're just left with having to feed the dairy herd. So I've got hold of the telehandler, the JCB telehandler that was parked down at the beef cow barn, and I've decided to bring that up here and use that to load the TMR mixing wagon. And as mentioned, I think I mentioned it in the last episode, I'm going to, this bucket takes about 2,600 litres. The TMR wagon I think is just over 11,000 litres. So to make it easy and to keep the proportions right, I'm going to put in 2 hay and 2 silage, so 50% mixture, and that should give us just under 11,000 litres per feed. I'm going to put, I think, 3 loads into each barn, into the new barn and the old barn. They've got roughly the same amount. There's 48 in the old barn and 52 in the new barn, so roughly the same amount. And then we will see how that lasts during the day. We want to kind of keep it in balance, so we don't want to have too much sitting uneaten. Right, let's just get this trailer hitched up. TMR mixing trailer. I'm going to use this tractor. It's slightly shorter than the Steyrs, so I find it a little bit easier. I may actually eventually upgrade the Steyrs to all of these tractors, or these short wheel base modern tractors, which turn very nicely. This one really turns on a sixpence, as I say. Right, so we'll just work out which is the best way to have things set up in terms of loading. So it'll either be this sideways, I think, really, I'm not going to bother now, but I think if I pull it across the top it'll be better, because that means I can just drive straight up with the telehandler, so instead of having to make this little turn to load. So I think that's probably not the optimal feeding position or loading position for the TMR wagon, but we'll see how it goes. These are minor issues, but over 6 loads, those little 30 seconds of turning and realigning and everything add up, really, you know. So I mean, we're already working late into the night. It's going to probably be after midnight before we finish again this month. Right, so TMR looking good. And there's plenty of it, over 200,000 litres in there at the moment. So come next spring, we'll do a spring cut, and we'll make TMR in the other silage clamp. So hopefully we won't have to buy any TMR. I would have to buy any silage to make our TMR. As mentioned in the last, in part 1, I've pretty much decided that I'm not going to cut grass during December. I feel it would just ruin the fields rather than. So the buying of the hay should be relatively cheap, but it is going to be an expense that we don't want to have next season, because we took over towards the end of the grass season. We have been a little bit, we have been up against it a little bit to get full winter feed in, so we're having to make some compromises to make sure we keep our cattle fed. That's fine, that's all part of setting up. We must be thankful that there were grass fields to start with, and that we took over with with some equipment and cattle, and we didn't have to buy cattle from scratch and all that type of stuff. So yeah, shouldn't complain too much. And with the sale of the excess beef cattle, we've at least got a little bit of a stash. We've got a bit of cash flow going. That should see us through. If it doesn't, we've got a problem. We will have failed. Of course, we will still have milk sales to come in, cheese sales, we'll have butter sales, so there's always going to be some income. Right, so this should be the first load about ready. I'll put this into the top barn, and then, as I say, I'll do it another 5 times. Put 3 into the bottom and another 2 after this one into the top. We'll have a look and see how that lasts during the course of the next 24 hours or so. Well, hopefully we'll be feeding a little bit earlier tomorrow, so we'll be able to gauge what the consumption is. And it's a fair amount of cattle. It's 100 head that are in TMR. Of course, the young ones are in the side shed, and I'm just keeping them on the hay at the moment. Their production is fairly low, even though they do produce milk in the game scenario. Of course, in real life they wouldn't be producing any milk because they would still be too young. Right, so as we discovered with the hay, we try to put hay in here. These sheds only feed from a right-hand chute. A left-hand chute, sorry. Not a right-hand chute, so from the left-hand side, on the left-hand side. Not really too much of a problem once you know. and it's not really too much of an issue with the hay. I haven't tested to see whether the hay would have fed if I had put it from a side feeder. Probably would have, but I really don't want to have hay in these fields here. When the cattle are out on the outer fields, I will keep feeding hay, simply because they get a better quality milk when they're out on in the pastures. You do get a slight drop in production because the cattle are using a bit more energy walking around the field, so that would simulate that quite nicely, I think. So we'll keep hay in the feeders in the field, mimicking them, the cattle eating of the grass. Yeah, so I'm just going to swing this around, and this is what I was talking about. I think this will be the optimal loading position, and it turned out that. So this is the last, this is the sixth load. No, it's not the sixth. I decided to put in 2 loads each side, so 4 loads. No, it is the 6th. Sorry, it is the 6th. Yeah, 6. It's because there was some feed still in, and I think we're going to end up around about. Yeah, so the feed was. They would have eaten some. Yeah, so 30,000. So it would have been 3 loads into here. Well, we'll pull up to what you call it. So it was quite a task. I mean, we are now at just before 1 o'clock in the morning. So it is going to be feeding is going to be quite a long task, simply because of the small machinery. But we will try and maximize the amount of time once we've worked out exactly how much we need to feed for any one given day. Right, we're just going to have a look at where our levels are. They look okay, Angus looks okay, Holsteins look okay, 26,000 there. Yeah, they're looking good. The side shed, the young ones have got plenty of hay, so they should be okay. Your old shed is the 17 months old, so they will start producing in the next month or so. 27,000, that's pretty good. Yeah, so levels of feed are looking okay. And we'll just kind of keep an eye on how that plays out over the next 24 hours or so to see whether we over or under feeding for a day period. Yeah, pretty happy with that. It's been a long day again. Eventually got through it. We're already up to just before 1 o'clock in the morning. Time to go and rest up, and then we'll face the new year with confidence and a certain amount of trepidation. But I think we've laid a fairly good base here for success. A couple of plans in the pipeline, which we'll talk about at later times. We've a couple of jobs we've still got to do. We've got to clear manure, and then we've still got to do a lot of other little jobs, but we're getting there. Well, that's it for this episode and for this part and for part 2. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, and cheerio.